Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I am Tessa, and I am joined by the amazing, accomplished, brilliant, lovely, best human being on earth, Cy.
The best. Oh my gosh, the pressure. Well, I am honored to be with the most phenomenal woman I know, Tessa. Thank you for just having us and making this space, and I'm excited for today's topic.
I am too. We're recording in January of 2024, and New Year's kind of like hanging out there still, even though I think we are past that like magic day where people tend to no longer pursue any New Year's resolutions. So maybe the New Year's magic has worn off. But I was thinking about this question that I think most of us hear somewhat frequently, and it is, would you go back to your 20s or some other age that are not currently right now?
Mm.
And I think the question is always asked in the idea of you don't get to take the knowledge that you have now and the confidence and the like just that life experience, but you have to like go back as you were.
Mm.
And I've always answered that question, no, I would not, because I've always thought like the best days are ahead of me. But I'm starting to think that maybe that question is less about like age and more about this idea of abundance and scarcity that I know you, Sai, are so adept at steering us towards frequently because it seems to be at the heart of a lot of things, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and I guess it boils down to, if people want to think of it in simpler terms, please correct me if I'm wrong, is your glass half full or your glass half empty?
Mm-hmm.
Which might be
Right.
a
And
huge oversimplification, but please guide us.
no, I mean it could be the way that it could be what it means to you. I think this question is such an interesting one because it's almost philosophical, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's it's really just like, what is your philosophy in life? Are you a person who, is living in the past, for example, right? Some of us are
Mm-hmm.
actually still in our mindset living like we were in another era, or really even just, kind of reliving that same era over and over again. And some folks are having a different trajectory, having a different journey, having a different path. They're in a different present. So I think you're right. A lot of it has to do with how we perceive the present, the past, and the future, and whether we see kind of our best days ahead of us or behind us. And that does have a lot to do with scarcity and abundance, because I mean, if you're living in the past because you think that's the best life has to offer, then you're really telling yourself that, there's only so many good things. And what I find really interesting about this question is it's so steeped in our values as a society related to youth. Right.
Oh my God, yes.
And how we we treasure this time. It's kind of silly but and funny, but I just watched the new Mean Girls movie, and they talk about there was just a line in there that stuck with me where the mom is like, this is as good as it gets, kind of thing. For the girls, I was like,
Ah,
this is the best, this is the best time of your life, and she was just like, it does not get better. And
oh my God,
I
that's
just
so sad.
I
Like
know.
they're supposed to be in high school, right?
Yeah, they're in high school, and the mom, is basically trying to relive her high school moments, obviously, through them, and is just kind of verbalizing this emotion that she's having, where she really, I guess, would go back, right? Like she really believes that this was the best that life ever could have been and ever will be. And it stuck with me because I'm like, "This is so tragic." And
Oh
it's
my
supposed
god,
to be funny, of
horrible.
course.
But essentially telling your child
Yeah, yeah.
that, yeah, you've got, probably
This is it. Yeah.
70, 80, 90 years ahead of you, and this is the best of it.
Which is in an like, I mean, that kind of sums it up and, like, how depressing that mindset is, and I guess what I would take from this question is not so much, like, what is inherently true or false, but for me, I really believe that we have so much agency in our lives.
Mm,
Not so much what is or isn't true or, what even makes sense. It's for one person or the next. It's how you choose to see life in general, what philosophy you choose to employ, because in my mind, the truth is that we don't even know what the future holds, of course.
yeah.
And whatever you think about the present, the one thing I know about life is that it's always changing. And so
Mhm.
I just find it interesting that anybody would relegate their mindset, first of all, to being so, I mean, in a way, arrogant, thinking that you know exactly what would happen in the future. To me,
Yeah.
that's fascinating because
But also
I
assuming
definitely
that
don't
it's
think
the
that.
worst,
And
right?
then assuming that it's worse, and like, and then for me, I believe that your mindset, really is the way by which you exercise a lot of agency in life. And so if your mindset is that the rest of your life is going to be terrible, well, it might be because that's what you're deciding already, and that's what you're attracting, and that's what you're constructing. For me, I believe as much circumstance as there is in the world, as much randomness as there is in the world, as much fortune and unfortune there is, or all of these different things that we feel like we can control. I still hold on to the agency that we do have, and the one thing that we have that no one else can really take from us is our mindset. It really is like this, what we're talking about, the philosophy of life and what we believe um, life is all about and how it operates. And so this question is so fascinating because it feels like one of those things is just like that's fun. Like, oh,
Ah,
what part of your life would you go back to kind of thing. But it reminds me of a question someone asked when I was in Chicago. I was serving tables and we would have kind of like little icebreakers for whatever reason in our like little huddles, and they would always ask some weird question, some random question. And one time someone said, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live? And I just started thinking like, oh, what sounds fun? What sounds cool? And I really didn't know the answer to that. And it's just, it's just funny to me that like this memory is it's like a core memory that I don't have a lot of memories in general. And so it's just fascinating that I even remember this. But one woman came around and she was, obviously we're all living in Chicago, and she said, Chicago. She said, "I don't believe in living somewhere I don't wanna live." She was like, "I'm gonna live in the place that I would ideally love to live in, and that's why I'm here." And it just stuck with me because I thought, "That's true, like, why are we fantasizing about where we want to live? Why are we not making a
yeah.
plan and just going and living there?" Right? And I don't know if that was a part of my journey, but I mean, I just remember from then thinking like, where do I really want to live? And why can't I just start working on that and getting there? And why not? Why not me in this place that I want to be? And so, it kind of reminds me of this question where it's like, you could start fantasizing about something. And when I say fantasy, I say it intentionally in the sense of it doesn't mean it's real,
Yeah.
like, I'm even the idea of your 20s is, some kind of culmination of memories, of course, but of feelings and nostalgia and narrative that you've created around that story. Like, there's all kinds of interesting things about how we even remember the past, that I guess I won't get into, but it just makes me think about how, like, we could be even idealizing a fantasy even when we think about this question. So when I hear that question, it just makes me think more so about how we perceive the present, the past, and the future. And And for me, I choose to live primarily in the present. I try to plan for the future to set myself up for success so I can have more good days in the future that are, my new present. But when I think about the past, I kind of just think about it with gratitude that it all culminated in today and this moment. And so for me, thinking about going back to the past makes me feel like I would be giving up so much of what I've gained and earned and experienced and explored between then and now. And so the only thing I can think of like why somebody would, love that idea of going backwards. It's just again, I wonder what their experience would be with this question, but it makes me think it's the idea that there's not an abundance waiting for us on the other side of today, um, and that there's something special about being young, and whatever that means for people. It primarily makes me think it's things that society values that we wish we had again so that we could impress other people. That's primarily what I think. But what's really funny to me is like youth and I don't know, whatever you want to call it around that, like, maybe your body was different, maybe your face looked different or whatever. And maybe you think that you are more valued by society when you looked a certain way or what have you. What I find interesting is that that's probably all true for me, and I didn't love myself, even my body and my appearance, as much as back then as much as I do now, which I just find fascinating, and it shows that it's truly like your mind, your mindset, your perception, your I don't even know how to say, kind of like your thoughts and your internal kind of like journey is so much more important than just, the way you were perceived by society, I guess is my point. And so that's where I think it's interesting to know that other people's priorities and other people's approval. I think what happens with age, at least in my journey, is that you know, all those priorities kind of shift and you realize like,
Yes.
oh, it's about me. It's not about impressing other people. It's about like this internal thing, this internal journey, this internal building, this growth, this enlightenment thing, like all of that is such a whole different journey than I guess personally in my 20s. I think, just like a lot of young people, it's far more about gaining outside approval, I guess. And I definitely don't want to go back there.
Every time I think of my 20s or younger, maybe even early 30s, I think
Mhm.
I was so young and dumb,
Mhm. Yep.
right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
extrapolate all that as you wish in that expression. But I just, like, for me, it's all about the wisdom that I now have about
Mhm.
life. And as you point out, not caring about other people's approval. But it also makes me think of maybe a parallel question that I see now with a friend of mine who always tells her two sons that, well, we need to be saving for vacation because everything is about vacation.
Mm.
And it like very like scarcity lifestyle with the rest of their life. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, in theory, 2 weeks of the year are supposed to be like this amazing time, but the remaining 50 weeks are supposed
That's
to really
a
suck. And
that's a
I'm
big
like,
bet on those 2 weeks.
right? And I'm
Putting
just
it
like,
all on red, like, these 2
it's
weeks.
a, it's I think it's like the woman who answered that she wants to live in Chicago, right? Like,
Mhm.
why don't you want to be at home?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
doesn't
why don't
preclude vacation, but why is it so awful
No.
that it's like
Well, why wouldn't
scarcity
you want
mindset?
that? Yeah, why wouldn't you want that every day? Why
Right?
why would you deny yourself pleasures and joys and happiness, like, every day?
And sometimes when I hear people talk like that, I'm like, "Is this just because I'm a Taurus? I'm, like,
Mm.
all about pleasure and, making everything like, let's heighten all our senses all the time because it should look and feel and taste and smell just amazing and lovely, and
Mm.
it should just be about how can you bring your life more pleasure in every moment."
Yeah,
But, uh wow, I think living your life for 2 weeks or living your life in the past, it kinda seems like a waste of the present to me.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there's always a saying, I don't know if I should probably say it now, but, well, I will, I guess, 'cause it sticks with me all the time, which cracks me up. Maybe I've said it before, but I heard once that someone said, if you're, if you're having one foot in the past and one foot in the future, like, you're kind of, like, poo-pooing all over today, and I find it hilarious, and also, like, it sticks with me because 'cause I'm like, you can't really be everywhere in your mind, like, we're really talking about, like, where are you transporting yourself in your mind, and if you are really
Yeah,
living in the past and obsessed about what happened in the past. I mean, I know that there's so much, for example, trauma healing work that needs to happen when you really have things you need to process from the past. But I mean, even fantasizing about things that, really don't exist yet or did exist at one point and you don't have them anymore, people, relationships, like events, youth, whatever, like all these things. I I mean, you're really, like, missing out on today, and before you know it, like, today's gonna be gone, and then you're gonna be
yeah.
in the future wishing that you had, like, really embodied the day that you missed thinking about another day, So that part is just, like, the part that gets me where, another way that people put it is, like, none of those other moments even exist, like, this is the only moment that exists right now. This moment is it. Like, there's the future doesn't exist yet, the past is gone, this is the only moment we actually have, so if you're wanting to live, this is the only option really to really truly live.
And to also, like, as you point out, we have agency and we have
Mhm.
we can shape the future the way we want by making today what we want it to be.
Yes. Yes.
And I saw this interview of a filmmaker who said, commercial film also often tends to want to make the audience happy, but he chooses to make films that make him happy. And it turns out they
Mm.
also tend to be commercially viable because he's not the only one who has these feelings, right? And I mean, I
Well,
think about it for your life
that's
too, right?
yeah. That's just interesting to think about how, like, we think we know what people want. So we're trying to do the thing to impress people that we think that they want us to do, and even if that's your goal, you don't actually know that.
Right? I mean, you could have 1,000 of those little things that the word now escapes me where you like pull people or you bring them in and you show them
Mhm.
things. And I mean, the focus
Focus
groups are almost,
groups, yeah.
yes, but I just don't believe that I think people in focus groups answer the way people think they want them to answer and not the
Yep.
way they actually want to answer, which is the
Mm.
same as this question about going back in time to your 20s, right? Like it is about what you think people want, which is youth and being in your 20s.
Yes, yes, and I mean, we get a lot I mean, to be fair, we get a whole lot of messaging that tells us that is
Oh
what
my God.
society
Yeah.
wants. So, that's not like I don't want anyone to feel like they're being gaslit because it's definitely a real phenomenon, and bombardment of messaging. But what I find interesting about that too is if we're being bombarded with this messaging that that's who we should be, that's how we should look or even act or whatever, dress, portray ourselves as, and there's only so many people that are in that age group. It just fascinates me to think like that's completely unrealistic. And why are we being message to in this way? Why is this the message? Why is this the propaganda? And for me, I find it very convenient that there's so many products and so many things that you need to buy in order to be a little bit closer to, this ideal. of youth, as opposed to us just like truly embracing ourselves at every age. There's some guy on I think TikTok who is really interesting. I can't remember all the things that he really talks about, his whole message, but he actually he kind of dissects this whole like obsession that we have with youth. And it's really fascinating to hear it with his voice because he's like, like a maybe a middle-aged man or something like that. And he just talks about the fact that like we, as men, heterosexual men, like we should be attracted to women of our age the way that they are. Like, it's just really interesting. He's like,
Shocking.
yeah, and it is shocking. That's what's hilarious about it, where I'm like, this guy's getting so much, attention, and I'm watching his videos thinking like, this is different. It's funny because it's so like, yeah, it should be so obvious. It should not be shocking. But the things that he is saying are like actually just kind of revealing the realities of how we think as a society, how we think it's completely okay to be obsessed with youth, for everyone to be attracted to like the youngest, person that is just becoming an adult. Like, I mean, it's a strange, interesting thing that people just don't talk about. We just kind of accept it. Like, yeah, but that's what everybody wants. That's what everybody wants to look like. Even like this, and I don't mean to criticize anybody or at all. I just think it's interesting, like this obsession with celebrities who are like, oh, they're 65 years old and they still look like they did when they were 25 years old. And I'm just like, that's weird. I think it's just kind of interesting, but also weird. Like that's so strange. That we are praising that, and there's all kinds of psychology that goes behind that, obviously. But at the end of the day, for most of us, we are going to change. Like that's the thing that really gets me through life the most, I think, is just my embracing of the fact that if nothing else, life changes all the time. And you have to be basically ready to be creative and to basically be accepting of all the change, because it never stays the same. Your body's not going to stay the same, your mind is not going to stay the same, your outlook on life is not going to stay, your circumstances are not going to stay the same, your relationships are going to change. Like, everything changes. And so with that, I feel like this phenomenon of us trying to preserve like our youth, for example, forever and ever, or at least in our appearances, is kind of like it's kind of a manifestation of our fear of change, right? And like our lack of ability to cope with change and accept change. Because if we can just like freeze ourselves in time, at least in our appearances, I guess, is the goal, apparently from society, then we won't have to deal with change, and we won't have to like go through the hard, I guess, what people perceive as like this hard thing to do, which is just to accept yourself in every form at every stage of your life. I mean, I think it's far
Uh,
easier to do that, to be honest. I really
Oh,
do.
absolutely.
And people that get obsessed with doing this or changing their bodies and all of that, I'm like, I've literally told people like, or like they'll be like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, that sounds exhausting. I'm like, or you could just like work on loving yourself. Like, I just,
Wow, revolutionary.
but sadly it is. Sadly, it
It
still is in
is.
today's society. It really is still a revelation to really get to that point. And so again, like that's the thing. It's like when you're young, or I don't even think when you're young. I think like honestly throughout this whole society, it's not about what age you're at. People encourage in so many different ways. And when I say people, I mean, the full on society in every form like encourages and pushes us to not even conform to certain like, ways of being, but like truly to conform to the idea that we should be looking like we did when we were in our 20s, even acting like we did in our 20s. That sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of pressure to not only look that way, but also to like, um, also to really like accept that that is what you should want. And that's a weird way to say it. I don't know how else
Yeah.
to say it, but it's like there's this pressure of like you should want to look that way. I just I mean, every time I hear somebody talking about a diet now, I kind of, like, just kinda cringe, like, I don't know why, I don't know if that's the right thing, but for me, I'm just like, if you want to eat a certain way that makes you feel good, awesome, fantastic. But, I mean, it's just frankly, when people are wanting to just change themselves to look a certain way for some other reason other than their health, and I want everyone to be happy, so, that's where it gets really complicated because, like, us being happy with our body is so intertwined with that thing that we were just talking about of, like, how society sees us and how we
Mhm.
want to be perceived, and, it does definitely change the attention you get and all of these different things that are very real things in society, I can't deny that. However, there are some people who just love themselves. There's a saying that's right in front of me in my mirror right now that says, "I'm obsessed with becoming a woman comfortable in her own skin" by
Yep.
Sandra Cisneros. And that to me is just like such a much more interesting concept because at the end of the day, a lesson I learned very early on is that you can't please everyone. Period. Hard stop. Right? Like that's
Yep.
not a real thing. And so for me, I'm like, if you can't please everybody, who should you please? And I've just come to the conclusion like it should be me. Because that's the most
Absolutely.
important one, right? And whoever else likes it, cool. And whoever else doesn't, cool.
So,
Don't
that
care.
reminds me of this Dan Levy quote from, I think,
Mhm.
when
I
Schitt's
love
Creek
him.
was ending,
Mm.
that is, "No one should treat you better than you treat yourself," which
Yes.
I can admit to failing to, and I think a lot of us don't live up to that idea that we treat
Mm.
ourselves better. But I
It
wanna
should be
touch
a
on.
competition. It should
Right? And you should be winning for
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
I want to touch on what you said about the outside messaging we get that,
Mhm.
youth is paradigm, which, yeah, again, I'm going to go back to young and dumb. But I follow this woman on Instagram who's, I think, somewhere in her 60s. Her name is Teen Style, I think, if I remember correctly. And she posts her outfits and what she's wearing, what she's doing today, typical lifestyle kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And she posts comments she gets from people in their 20s, and most of them are, "I can't believe you're wearing that."
Uh-uh.
And I'm just like, how bad is the messaging if
Mhm.
people who are in their early 20s are
Mhm.
then dictating to somebody who is just living her best life
Right.
not to wear the clothes that she's wearing?
So sad that that's still a thing. I was so hopeful when we got into like
I
the body
know.
positivity movement. I was like, yes, finally. I really thought that these other generations were going to put us to shame and just like embrace the body, embrace aging, embrace everything. But it's so pervasive, and it's going to take a lot of intentionality and a lot of
Yeah.
real, like movement work to make that happen. But it is sad because, at the end of the day, in my mind, we are all just like having this human experience together, but we're also having it like for ourselves, like
Yeah.
it fascinates me that people, feel like they have to perform for others,
Mhm.
and so much so that they look at you funny when you're not doing it, when you're not living
Right?
for everyone else, which is fine. I think that's exactly why you have to embrace the dirty looks and just tell yourself whatever you have to. Like when people give me looks, I think, wow, I must look so cute today, or they just must be so obsessed
I
with my
love
hair,
that.
from Mean Girls, but I'm just like, they really, really are, just paying attention to me because I am doing something right today. And, frankly, I just don't care what the truth is, and I will never think about these people ever again. So why am I going to waste my time right now and my energy right now on that? And, it's that kind of thing that I'm saying is like your mindset literally changes your life. Every part of your mind, like, I mean, just how you choose to approach the world because there's this picture sometimes I see online that's like, maybe I've said this before too. There's like a bee at the top, and there are two people looking at the bee, and you can see what the people are thinking about in their heads through drawing. And one of them is thinking like, "Oh no, I'm gonna get stung, and this is dangerous." And the other person is thinking like, "Ooh, I could get a lot of honey from this bee. It's gonna be great."
Wow.
And I just find that to be like such a nice little succinct summary of how reality is perception.
Oh,
Reality
yeah.
is literally how you see it. It's there is no real like one reality truly. I mean, sure, I'm not detached from reality. I know that things really happen. Um, but I mean, in a lot of circumstances, I'll say at least, um, the mindset and the perspective around reality can really change your entire experience and how you are experiencing and taking in and really interacting with the happenings and facts of life.
And it also makes me think our realities are also shaped on who we surround ourselves with, right? Like, are we surrounding ourselves with people who see that bee as options for honey? Or are we surrounding ourselves with people who see that bee as we're going to get stung, or that the next day is going to
Mm,
be the worst day of my life without
mm.
any knowledge base that that's what's going to happen?
Oh, and it makes me think, I don't know why, but just thinking about animals, but like there is something very real about what will happen in reality based on how you approach a situation. So I don't know about bees, but for example, like with dogs, if you think a dog is going to hurt you or bite you or what have you, and you're afraid of the dog, that could influence what happens. Like if you're
Yeah,
giving that energy and you're really scared, that can actually, trigger something in the dog and how they're going to perceive you, approach you, interact with you. And I just really think that that's a very simple example, but I really think, that is so true of human interaction. When you come into a situation, especially, group setting or even one-on-one individuals, what have you, and you have a certain preconceived notion of what's going to happen and how this person is going to behave and how this person is going to act. I mean, this is already proven psychology, but I mean, it definitely can, and oftentimes does impact what that interaction will be. If you're scared of a person, they're not going to be comfortable by you. I mean,
hmm,
if you are already thinking that somebody is bad in some way, or just coming to even like a group project, for example, with negativity. If you think this is going to fail and you walk in day one, this is going to fail. It's more likely to fail because of your attitude, not because you were right, not because you're
hmm.
just so good at predicting things, right? But because your energy and your mindset and your approach literally has an impact and has an influence over the results of what happens in life. And so I just point that out to say, look at how powerful we are. Look at how powerful our mindset is, and mindset is a choice. It's one of the few choices I think that we really have in the world, is we have a choice on how to perceive it. We have a choice on how to approach it. We have a choice on our philosophy of life, on our theory of change, on our theory of, how life will go and how it operates. And so it makes me feel empowered. And it's something that, again, I didn't know to the extent that I know now. I didn't know this in my 20s or when I was younger, to that full extent. It's something that you have to really kind of, embrace, truly believe, and then you have to test it for yourself. And when you start to see it work, then it becomes really real for you, in my experience.
I would add on a layer that our words matter, that we say
Mhm.
to ourselves and
Yes.
that we say
And
to
others,
others.
yeah. Mhm.
I was thinking of an example of I am Swedish, as we all know, which by nature means that I am reserved, right? Like I'm going to be the observer. I'm not going to be the loudest person in the room.
Mhm.
And so I'm often labeled shy. So I'm like, by definition, being shy means you have fear. And I'm like,
Mm.
don't have the fear. I'm just reserved. But I think about like how messed up society is because they call anybody who is quiet shy, which is
Mm.
inaccurate,
Right.
but it transfers to like every other thing too, right? Like I think so many people, and I think Adam Grant has pointed this out too, that we often believe the loudest voice when it's
Mhm.
probably the quietest voice that has the right answer for you.
Yes, the most pervasive ones, my god. I just
Yes.
can't stop thinking about politics when you say that. That's
Right. I think that's where all our minds go, and it's like,
Oh my
"Oh."
Yeah, let's just scream louder. Like, the debates are just like such a fascination. I really wish sometimes I was still, like concentrating in psychology because I'm like, I would love to study like what all of this means and how we got here because at this point it's just a screaming match and
It is.
there's no point of even asking questions. Like, truly, you could be like blue and people would still go off on whatever they want to go off on. I mean, actually, blue could be affiliated with a political party. But, anyways,
You
that's
could be
my
asking what color the
point.
sky is. Yeah.
Exactly. And it would just be like, what are you suggesting? I mean, it's so wild. And you're right though. Again, the way that society chooses to perceive others on the mainstream, again, influences so much. It literally in so many ways, it can determine sometimes, if we're not careful, what our life path will be actually. And we've
Yeah.
talked about this before in regards to like how people perceive us, how we dress, how we speak, how we present
Mhm.
ourselves, especially as women,
Mhm.
especially in all of our otherness, the way that we're perceived is very important in my life experience to what's going to happen in regards to how people are going to interact with you and give you, any opportunities that they can, etc. Right. And so that is just something I point out to say that, again, there are realities in the world, but even those realities, again, are about perception, right? And it's about the way
Absolutely.
that the other people are seeing us and other people's philosophies on the world and there are sometimes conceptions and misconceptions and the thing that gives me a lot of hope right now is that we are challenging people's perceptions as a society, right? Like we can talk about whether or
Yeah.
not we're going quick enough, what kind of progress we're really having, whether it's, how strong it is or what have you, right? But I would say on the whole, I'm very optimistic about the fact that people think differently. Even if they disagree, they think differently now than they used
Mhm.
to. So, like, just think about how Black and brown people used to be perceived, women used to be perceived. I mean, there's just so many ridiculous perceptions. I mean, it's truly fascinating to remember that, like, it used to be a preposterous idea for a woman to like, have a job, to vote, to have any
Yeah.
agency, to spend money, to like, I mean, all of these
To have
things,
a bank account.
to have a bank account in her name. Come on now, like this is just wild that this was not that long ago, right? And what I'm
No, it was like the
saying,
70s when it changed. Like, hello.
I mean, we're not even talking about too many generations here. So my point being is that I'm just pointing this out to say, look at the power again of perception and the power of mindset. I think for me, one of the things that, you know, I keep coming back to with your question about where do we want to be in our lives? Um, it makes me kind of think about the lifespan of our society altogether and how it's very like it mirrors one another in regards to it being a journey, in regards to our mindset and how we're growing. And it's like, I mean, there truly are people, as we know in politics, that say they want to go back. They literally want to go back in time, of course,
Oh,
right? Yeah. And I mean, just think
yeah.
about that, what that would mean for our society, right? And why do they want to go back? Well, back then, I mean, a lot of terrible reasons they want to go back. But back then, I mean, just in terms of this conversation, our mindset was not as evolved as it is today. period. I mean, and that's not a political statement. It's just literally, our mindset has changed and evolved over time. And now we're at this different place. And that's one of the reasons people want to go back because they don't like that. They don't like the growth that we've experienced, right? As a whole, as a society. But the truth is that you can't go back. Things can't be unlearned in that way. People, at least that's my hope. And I think it's the same thing with us as individuals. It's like once you know certain things to be true, like really true, because that's the thing. When you're young, you don't know what's true actually. You know what
Oh,
people
you
tell
think you
you.
do?
You think you do. But I mean, really, like, what are we basing it on, right? It's not experience.
Yeah.
So we're basing it
No.
on what other people tell us, and other people have had lots of different experiences. And the thing that kills me today that I know, at this point in my life is that so many times when people are telling you something, what they think you should do, or what they think, this is how the world is, it's truly limited by their life experience. And so when I was young, the thing that I think I could not trade in right now is that when I was young, it's like you had to trust what people were saying because you didn't know any better, right? You didn't have the experience, you didn't know what else to presume that on. You could be critical, right? And I think I was to some extent. But at the same time, there's a certain point where it's like you have to believe somebody because otherwise you can't formulate any opinions. And maybe that's what I shouldn't have done. But now every time I am hearing somebody, I don't think like, oh, this person is, just correct and I just accept everything that they're saying, or even when I was critical, it's just like it wasn't to the extent that I understand now where it's like it's not that this person is lying to me or it's just wrong. It's like they can't know more than they know. They can't see something they haven't seen. They can't have experienced something they haven't experienced. And so it's just like an interesting nuance now that, when I'm talking to people, it's like they say like, "Oh, take it with a grain of salt."
Ugh, I
Now
hate
I
that
now
expression.
I know. I'm like, "Okay." But now I really understand that, like, you have to understand the full context of the situation where every person's story is just a piece. It's just one person's lived experience, and we all have a different one, and so that's the beauty of, well, first of all, diversity, but it's also the beauty of, um of learning things for yourself, taking, what you can from others, but like taking it with the perspective that makes sense for you and having a strong perspective and mindset in life and the way that you want to perceive things.
This reminds me of a text that you sent me recently about unsolicited advice
Hmm.
triggering trauma responses,
Mm,
right? And it makes me think that just what you said, we have to start thinking about other people's advice, even when we ask for it, I think, because I don't think everybody answers the question the way we want answers the question that we think we're asking, right? Like
mm,
they
hmm.
interpret our question into a question that they want to answer
Yes,
based on
you're
the
just opening a
experience that they
door.
have. Yep.
Yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, sometimes you're just opening the floodgates for a whole bunch of unsolicited advice and other opinions you did not want.
Right?
That's very true. And I wonder if people have had that experience of just like feeling worse, for wanting help. Um, and I know that they have. All of us have felt that, I'm sure. But it makes me think about like how can we interact with people in a way to, really be vulnerable, get the care that we need, I guess without I don't know. It's a really tricky one. I don't want to say that we can't allow, something to happen that happens kind of naturally in conversation. But I think the thing that we have to get better at, or the thing that we could work towards is redirecting people, frankly. Like that's the only skill that I've been,
Yeah.
like how can I hone in on? Because when people start pulling out these things that are just maybe like hurtful, for example, or just off the mark,
Mhm.
Oftentimes I feel like we just feel inclined like we have to listen and we have to accept it, and then we also have to engage in this new direction that they've taken us in. Whereas
Yeah.
if we could keep people on track at least and redirect them to what we're actually asking them for, or just say like, this is not the conversation I want to have. Like, I mean, I'm just thinking about how can we have agency even in the smallest thing like you're talking about, just like the conversation that's going awry. How can we have agency in that, for example?
It makes me think when we are asked for advice, should we be repeating the question back, saying like, "I think you're asking blah blah blah
Mhm.
blah. This is my
And
experience."
is this what you're seeking from me too? Like, is it like, do you want
Yeah,
my is this you're wanting my advice right now? Like, I've been saying that more and more, and it's so helpful because sometimes, I mean, I mean, basically conversations a lot of times are just a whole lot of assumptions. I'm assuming you want me to say
right.
this now. You're assuming I wanted you to go there with that, and having to redirect things in a way that serves the conversation is important because otherwise, I mean, you're kind of just going off of assumptions on and on until you end up in a place you didn't mean to be in.
This might be why, like, I want to say a lot of conversations with people who were in my immediate family growing up still devolve very quickly because of
Mm,
assumptions.
yes. And because people want to talk about what they want to talk about. I mean,
Uh, yeah,
I
that.
th I think like just like you like even like we were saying with politics, it's just like you could say anything like, "Oh, how are you today?" Well, I'm terrible, and it's because of the thing you did to me in 1933 or well, 33 is too far. 93, right? And I've been thinking about that. You know what I mean? Like it could quickly devolve into madness. And so I don't know how to, I don't think we can protect against all of that. But I do think, now we're having a conversation, I think, somewhat about boundaries or maybe there's another word. For me, it's just the idea of having agency in your moment. Like we're talking about the past and the present and the future. And for me, it's like, if this is the only moment I have, do I want to be having this conversation right now? Do I want to be having the experience of this conversation, right? Like, do I want to go there? Do I want to spend the rest of my day thinking about this person's, gripe with me? Like, no, I
Yeah,
don't. I actually don't.
yeah.
And so often I find myself just literally like de-escalating and disengaging, walking away slowly. Goodbye. Like,
I love that.
like it's
We
a
all need to
bomb.
do that more, right? Like,
Yeah.
not only with like people, but with like messaging we get in
Mm,
advertising and media,
mhm.
social media. Like, let's all start slowly walking away and disengaging just to protect our own peace.
I love that they called it social media because it tells you exactly what it is.
Yeah, peer pressure.
Social media. Like whoever made that term, they nailed
Yeah,
it.
they
But
did.
yeah,
And I don't
really.
even think they predicted like
No,
the
they couldn't.
bots
Well,
and the
I don't know.
misinformation. Or
I
maybe
don't
they
think they
did.
could
Maybe
have.
that's what they wanted.
I mean, I think that they predicted the advertising piece of it that we didn't know about.
Yeah.
Like we were so dumb, talking about being young and dumb.
Yeah.
We walked right into this one thinking it was so innocent. I just remember thinking, "Oh, that's cute." Like I mean, completely unaware of what was about to happen. But besides that, truly, there are a lot of like landmines in our everyday lives, especially if you have a lot of people in your life who basically, in my mind, have unresolved trauma or just have mind or even like we were talking about have a mindset that's very different than yours, right? Like they can pull you into that mindset quickly. And so like you said, Tessa, it's so important for us to surround ourselves with people that we that really just serve our higher selves in a way, right? Like serve us in a way that helps us get more to who we want to be or live more in the present or whatever your philosophy is that you want to have. Maybe it's about being conscious about, how do you live that way? how do you surround yourself with the people and the circumstances that are going to encourage you to live that way, that are going to make it easy for you to live that way, right? I believe in trying to make everything easy. I really think that
I love
that's
that.
one of the secrets, right? Is like everything, and because what's the opposite of that? The opposite is like puritanical values of everything should be hard and everything should be
Oh,
difficult and,
and
everything should
life
be
is suffering.
punishing. Life is suffering, my
Oh,
God. I think of it the exact opposite. I think of Celia Cruz, La vida es un carnaval. It's life is a carnival. Like it's a
yep.
celebration, and that's the difference in mindset. Like that's another perfect example. Like you could truly think that life is the purpose of life is suffering. A lot of people really believe that. Or you could choose to think that the purpose of life is to live it and to enjoy it and to celebrate it. I mean, this is a real choice.
Shocking. You know, it is.
Shocking.
I
A
know.
revelation. But I
Yeah.
mean, we're so many people are, well, I will say like in my perspective and my mindset, people are tricked into believing that their life should be sacrificed for
Yep.
something else, for something that's not here right now, that's for something in the future that again, a future past and present. It's like again, it's the philosophy. And when you're living for somebody else's future or a promise of a future, some scary things can happen as far as what you should be doing today. I mean, there's a lot of cults that base their entire premise on you should be doing this so that you can get that in the future, right? And so another reason why I stay away from that and try to live for now as much as possible. And I just don't think that you can really enjoy that again, my philosophy I'm showing it is I really think life is meant to live and enjoy and really take pleasure in, and if we're not doing that, if we're living for some tomorrow, we truly never will enjoy it, and that's just tragic. And that would be a tragedy in my mind.
So true. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of tips of like, how do we
Mm,
live for our present with optimistic view of our futures without
mm,
just saying, block it all out, block out
yeah.
everybody. But I don't think that's true because I don't think you and I are alone in the idea that life is not
No.
suffering and that life is meant to be lived and today is amazing and tomorrow can be even more fabulous than today is.
Mhm. I think you gotta find the people that I mean, it's that they're on the same vibe, like, find the
Yeah,
people that want to do it with you because the truth is, life is really it's kind of what you create it to be. I mean, if you really want life to be about fun and or pleasure or joy, and whatever form that is, that could mean so many things. It can mean so many different things for different people. It could mean, like you've talked about, reading a book. It could be gardening. It could be all kinds of it could be parties. It could be doing nothing. It could be
yep,
silence for you. It could be a million friends. It could be two friends. It could be no friends. It could be just family. It could be no family. It could be children. It could be no children. It could be anything. It could be pets. No pets.
yeah,
Like your joy doesn't look like anyone else's joy. And that's great. But that means that you have to find a way to create that. You have to find a way to foster that joy in your life and make it a part of your regular daily practice, right? And one of the
so
things
true.
that helps me, that's just a small, kind of practice, is having one moment of gratitude in the day. Just being like just reflecting on that. And because truly, if you think about what you're grateful for, it helps you to seek the things that you will be grateful for in my, in my philosophy. Because when you really reflect and say like, wow, I really get joy from this thing or from this person or from spending time, doing this thing, and you just have that moment of reflection. First of all, gratitude is great for your health if you need it more cell up.
Hmm.
and it's also an opportunity for us to just like take stock of what is good in life and what's good, for us as individuals. What really
Yeah,
is joyful, for us, because it's something that is different for everybody. And I think that's one of the saddest things about social media, about media in general, about societies like propagandic messaging, even about things like we talked about in regards to like, the value of overvaluing, I would say, of youth or the perception of youth and different things like that is all of that is really trying to sell you the idea that these things that other people are presenting are going to bring you joy. They're going to make you happy. I mean, this is why we see so many, tropes on TV and media about like, the midlife crisis or people waking up and realizing they're not happy, after they put in so much work into this thing. It scares me how powerful the fantasy of happiness is and how people use it
Yeah.
to get us to do certain things and even like truly like put our life on a certain track to pursue something that is the idea of somebody else's happiness. It's the idea of somebody
Yeah.
else's joy, right? And so that's why I say one practical thing is just reflecting, period, but also specifically reflecting on the things that bring you joy and bring you pleasure. And maybe it's once a day, you just think about what were you grateful for today, or maybe, kind of being grateful is an interesting concept. I think more specifically, I want to say what brought you joy or what brought you pleasure today? What really made you feel good? And just even allowing yourself the permission to think about that
Yeah.
and then be grateful for it is a powerful thing, actually.
I find that if I say am uncomfortable expressing my gratitude or joy toward a person
Hmm.
because of, say, reactions you have received in the past from that person,
Hmm.
journaling, very helpful. Even if it's just
Yeah,
notes on your phone, like
yeah.
it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't need to, purchase any new equipment or anything.
No,
Just like
no.
take those ideas and get them out of your head, whether or not you're just like saying them to your dog or saying them to your garden or saying them on your patio
Hmm.
or typing in your notes. So you, whatever makes you feel safe. But I
Yeah,
totally agree that expressing your gratitude for what the world had given you that day and what you have taken for that day and what you have enjoyed in that day, so important.
yeah. And then, maybe from that practice, we can translate that and transform that into a practice of setting our intention of seeking more, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in a world again of scarcity versus abundance, in a world of, suffering versus pleasure, in a world where we're encouraged to sacrifice and martyr ourselves, it is an act of revelation. It is an act of revolution to
Absolutely.
choose this other path, to choose our joy and our pleasure and our happiness. It really is. And I just want that for everybody because it's just what we deserve. I don't know how else to say
It
except
is.
that like
You're
there's no
right.
reason why we don't deserve this. People have lied to us and told us that we don't. I just think that they're lies.
I completely agree, and it is especially true for everyone who has been othered, women,
Mhm.
people of color, indigenous
Mhm.
people. It's just,
I mean, we've been manipulated, like
yes, we
historically
have.
manipulated. I mean, manipulated's not even a strong enough word. I mean, for some of these circumstances, right?
It was more like
We've been
forced
oppressed,
coercion. Yeah.
forced, coerced, and oppressed, right? And now I think what we're fighting against is an internalized oppression.
Yeah. I mean, just like that 20-year-old who comments on some 57-year-old's Instagram or 6-year-old Instagram because
Yes.
her, her skirt is too modern, so why should she be wearing it?
And
What?
she's and without knowing, probably perpetuating the internalization of this
Hmm.
oppression, right? And that's what I'm saying is that it makes all of us suffer when we
It
choose
does.
to be a part of that. I don't even know, if there's a I'm sure there's a brilliant word for it, but it makes me think about, like, perpetuating the patriarchy,
Mhm.
which, is some of that as well, but it's like we're perpetuating, these systems of oppression. We're doing it against our own interest, right? By holding each other down. We're doing it against our own interest because we can't rise together then if we're all holding each other down.
Oh, that just So, I think our optimistic view out of this is, come on, everybody, join our revolution to, like,
Yes,
be happy, make choices that make ourselves happy,
yes,
and to live in the moment and be happy in the moment,
yes.
regardless of what that moment is, because
And
there is
celebrate
always
and
something good.
uplift. Yes, there's always
Yes.
something good, and celebrate and uplift the other people who are seeking joy and pleasure in their
Yes.
lives. Like, let's be their freaking cheerleaders, right? Like, let's give them
Yes.
a boost up. Like, literally, let's lift everyone out of this bucket of oppression because this is not where we belong. This is not worthy of us.
Wow, I feel very empowered.
Me too. Let's do it.
Yes. And I hope all of you all also join us on this revolution to just make ourselves and the world a better place for all of us.
Yes. Go live the good life. I'm so proud of us already, and I'm excited for us to all have the lives that we deserve. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying uplifted and uplifting each other. I love you, Tessa. I love all of you
Love you,
listening.
Cy. Yes.
And I'm excited for our future,
Me too.
but even more our present.
Yay! Love this message. And thank you all for listening.
Take care. Bye bye.